Middlebury Road in Kent, Ohio is Fred Fuller Park, the city's largest recreational area. At 56 acres, it boasts softball fields, nature trails, picnic areas, and rental facilities. What most people don't realize is that one of the rental buildings played a very important role in the early days of Kent. It was once the town jail where criminals were held to await trial or release.
Historic buildings are part of our cultural fabric, and unlike, say, a cemetery where you can go see the headstones and the birth and death dates of people, an historic building is a living history. It really marked a point in time when Kent really was transformed from a sleepy little village where nothing was happening to the point where it became a center of commerce, kind of a second wave after the canal.
I think it's certainly a part of our history. It's the first structure that the city actually authorized building back in 1869. And if you look at, the history of Kent, it played a major role in that, certainly historically significant from a statewide standpoint, where these local jails disappeared over the years as we went to more regional and larger facilities. So it preserves a part of our past, and then also serves a function for the community to use.
Years passed, and the Kent jail continued to house the city's minor offenders. The crash of the stock market in 1929 and the ensuing Great Depression led to an influx of the jobless and homeless into Kent via the railways. By 1932, the jail had been nicknamed the Hobo Hotel and was expected to house 3,600 criminals by the year's end.
It was with the railroads being developed in the 1860s and 70s, we had a large migration of people coming through town, transient population, hobos and that sort of thing. And there was a sense in which the people of the community felt, and the public officials felt, that it was really necessary to have a modern facility to help deal with people that are disturbing the peace and causing small crime and that sort of thing.
In the years that followed, the city decided to move its detention facilities to be able to accommodate more people. New cells were placed in the basement of the police station across the street, and the Kent jailhouse was officially closed. The old jail building was used as the headquarters for the city service director and the city engineer.
When the developer came to town to develop Walgreens, they were purchasing a parcel from the city, and then there was a car wash there, and then this building set adjacent to that. So they were consolidating the properties for their development. When the community, this structure sat down there in its original Kent City Jail. It was in private hands since the 1930s, and an individual was living there as a little one-bedroom apartment. So it kind of was really unknown to the community. A lot of people didn't even know of its historic past.
It sat empty for quite a few years, and then it was a residence. And then when Walgreens and the bank wanted it, it was purchased.
They came to Parks and Recreation and were willing to increase their purchase price for the city's property by $100,000 and use that money to dedicate towards the moving of the structure. There was a lot of interest in the community that felt like, trying to make an opportunity to preserve a part of our future and possibly relocate the jail.
Originally, the project was to move the jail to an appropriate spot in the city. We identified a site with the director. They wanted to put it in the parks. They obviously wanted to use the building for a community facility that would be useful, a public facility. And then what we did was starting to work on the planning for moving it. Mr. Idoni is very ingenious and very good at working with people. And as we first started talking about doing it, he said, "Rick, if you're going to do this as an architect, as a fresh project, what would it cost to do this?" And I said, well, maybe $100,000 or more to do that. I said, it's going to cost $40,000 or $50,000 just to move the building, then to put a foundation underneath it, put mechanicals in and that sort of thing, that would grow exponentially.
In our initial plan, we came up with how we could utilize it, and actually did a pro forma on trying to make the operating costs of the utilities and that type of thing come up with a reasonable rent. And it's quite popular. I think we have probably 150 rentals a year.
Moving the building posed its own set of challenges. The jail was a difficult building to move due to its heavy weight and fragile design.
A lot of buildings that are moved are generally wood frame construction, so they're not very heavy. But although this isn't a very big building, it is a pretty heavy building being out of masonry. So part of what had to happen is they had to very carefully remove the back part of the building. There was an addition that wasn't part of the original construction. That had to be removed. They had to take the building and put it up on dollies to be able to move.
Moving a masonry structure is a little more difficult than moving a wood structure because wood is a little more forgiving. Masonry, when you start lifting it up in the air, once it starts cracking, the cracks are there. They removed the foundation and slid large beams underneath it and then began lifting it, and the front doorway started moving out like the whole thing was going to explode apart. And basically it moved about 6 inches out. We stopped, and he came back and manufactured some 1-inch iron rods that went around the perimeter of it, and then we kind of made 3 bands around the building.
Once the building was relocated, it was removed from the National Register of Historic Places. New paperwork was filed for the jail to be re-added.
When you move a building or change a building significantly, you can actually get it deregistered because you've changed the context and the fabric. The process for getting a building re-registered once it's been relocated is a lot like the process of getting it registered in the first place, and you have to demonstrate that even though you're putting the building into another context, as in, i.e. it was on a street in the historic part of town where there were other buildings around it, and now we're moving it to a tranquil park setting overlooking the river, it's a very distinctly different place. But what we're able to convince the Historical Society folks was that the building itself, because of its history that the jail played in the development of the city, still remained an important historic place.
Today, the old jail houses parties, not inmates. The building is open to rent by the public.
Kent City Schools has field trips here throughout the year, and we talk about the history of the jail. We also rent it out for birthday parties, wedding showers, and then a lot of groups use it for small meetings. It holds up to 22 people, so get a lot of use in the community.
This jail, being moved to the park in Fred Fuller Park, makes a unique meeting room or party room, and it has a very interesting and unique setting being in a jail, and it brings up a lot of questions and kind of a unique atmosphere.
Today, the Old Kent Jail is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and is protected as an important aspect of Kent's early beginnings as an industrialized city. In addition, the families, school groups, and passerby that visit the building each year are able to enjoy it not just as a part of the past, but as an active part of the present community.
I had a birthday party there. It was supposed to be a surprise party, but I figured it out. And we just had a wonderful time. It had a small kitchen and bathroom, and it's handicap accessible because one of my friends is in a wheelchair, and you can park and you can go out on the deck, and it was just great. And I think it's a great asset to the city that they went ahead and saved it.
Within some practical limitations, it's a good thing to do. I've learned, I used to have a mindset that if it's old, it's worth saving. But we have to be selective because it does cost a lot of money to save old buildings, especially if you move them, relocate them. So to me, it's been a real good lesson for our community about the importance of saving buildings. But also it taught us a lot on a first-hand basis of the practicality. Kent's a small town. You know, in big cities, people do historic preservation a lot. And we've had fights over historic buildings and have not done a great job historically doing that. So I think this is, it's always good to have some successes that you can point to with people and say, hey, this was a project that we have proven that if we have enough time and enough resources that we can save a building and use it again.